Herne the Hunter, the hooded forest god of Britain. The tale of Herne the Hunter is one shrouded in layers of mystery. For centuries he was thought to be nothing more than a ghost that lurked around Windsor Great Park. While less popular than Greek, Roman, or Nordic mythology, English mythology and folklore are filled with various characters that have persisted throughout time. There's Robin Hood and his band of merry men, which comes from Nottingham. The leaping devil Spring-Heeled Jack, who caused legitimate fear in the Victorian-era London, or Jack a Kent, a cunning man from Hertfordshire, known for his ability to outwit the devil. Plus, who can forget the most significant mythological figure from England, King Arthur, with his Knights of the Round Table and the Holy Grail? While we hear more about these more widely known characters, there is a unique one that is not often spoken about. In Berkshire, there's a legend of a ghost that resides in Windsor Forest. Herne the Hunter might be one of the most interesting ghosts haunting England. Herne the Hunter, in English folklore, is a ghost tied to Windsor Forest and Great Park in the county of Berkshire, England. Herne the Hunter has antlers that grow from his head, rides a horse, torments cattle, and rattles chains in the forest. One unique thing about Herne the Hunter is that he is a local folkloric character that only appears in Berkshire, nowhere else in Great Britain. Herne the Hunter is said to be tethered to an oak tree called Herne's Oak. The exact location of Herne's Oak was speculated among the people of Berkshire, and in old geographic survey map, Herne the Hunter's Oak was slightly north of Frogmore House in the forest to the east of Windsor Castle. The oak tree near Frogmore House was chopped down in 1796, but in 1863 another tree was claimed to be the real Herne's Oak tree. The second Herne's Oak tree was blown over during a storm, and shortly after, Queen Victoria had another oak tree planted in that same place. It was the new Herne's Oak which stood until 1906. The avenue the tree was located was being replanted, which led to the tree's removal. The latest oak tree planted in 1906 has adopted the title of Herne's Oak and still stands there today. A Shakespearean character? One of the earliest written accounts of Herne the Hunter is found in William Shakespeare's 1602 play, The Merry Wives of Windsor. The Merry Wives of Windsor. The published versions of the play tell the tale of Herne the Hunter, the ghost of a Windsor forest keeper who haunts one oak tree in the wintertime. Herne the Hunter is mentioned in Act 4, Scene 4 of The Merry Wives of Windsor. Quote, "There is an old tale goes that Herne the Hunter, sometime a keeper here in Windsor Forest, doth all the winter time, all still at still midnight, walk around about an oak with great raging horns, and there he blasts the tree and takes the cattle and makes their mitchkin yield blood and shakes a chain in a most hideous and dreadful manner. You have heard of such a spirit, and well you know, the superstitious idle-headed eld received and did deliver to our age this tale of Herne the Hunter for a truth." End quote. An earlier version of the play describes Herne the Hunter differently. In this version of the play, the ghost is named Horn. He was not Herne, but Horn, and he was invented to scare kids, a sort of British boogeyman. Samuel Ireland, the Shakespeare admirer, wrote a further explanation of Shakespeare's Herne the Hunter tale in 1792. Ireland explains the story of this Herne, who was keeper in the forest at the time of Elizabeth, runs thus: that having committed some great offence, for which he feared to lose his situation and fall into disgrace, he was induced to hang himself on this tree, Herne's Oak. As time has passed, more details about Herne the Hunter have been attached to his folkloric story. Sometimes Herne the Hunter is said to have been gored to death by a stag, but the devil appears and saves the dying man on one condition: Herne must wear the stag's antlers. Herne has been described as wearing the skin of a stag as a cloak with the antlers on top of the hood, or the antlers grown from Herne the Hunter's head. Herne the Hunter is said to make cows produce milk instead of blood instead of milk, as mentioned in The Merry Wives of Windsor by Shakespeare. In some legends, Herne the Hunter can make a tree shrivel up and die with a simple touch. Jacob Ludwig Karl Grimm, aka Jacob Grimm of the Brothers Grimm, wrote that Herne the Hunter was once the leader of the Wild Hunt. The trouble with folkloric tales is that their origin becomes murky as time progresses, and the tale is told and retold by others. The origin of Herne. The origin of the character of Herne the Hunter is unknown. However, this has not stopped authors and scholars from suggesting theories as to the hunter's true origin. In 1929, author R. Lowe Thompson suggested in his book The History of the Devil, the Horned God of the West, that the name Herne might have come from the Gauls. Thompson believes the name is a cognate of the name Gaulish deity Cernunnos. The English word for horn, kerato in Greek, is a cognate derived from the Latin word cornu. Thompson explains that if the word horn came from cornu, Herne might have been the name Kern, but the sounds shifted during the linguistic evolution of the English language. Another theory of Herne the Hunter's origin is related to the Anglo-Saxons. In the Middle Ages, Windsor Forest was controlled by the Angles, pagans who worshipped many gods, including one named Woden. Woden is the equivalent of the figure of Odin in Norse mythology. One of the many myths about Odin is that he would ride across the sky at night with spectral antlers, hunters, and hang himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, in order to uncover a secret rune alphabet. This relates to Herne the Hunter because the name may have come from the word Herien, the Old Norse Einherjar, the title Woden would adopt while being the leader of fallen warriors and hunters. This theory is one of the less popular ones. Then there's the theory that Herne the Hunter was a real person. Herne might be the ghost of a man named Richard Horne, a landowner, middle-level servant of Henry VIII, who was caught poaching in Windsor Forest. This idea comes from Shakespeare scholar James Halliwell Phillips, who found a document from the 1500s that listed a person named Horne as a hunter who was caught and confessed to poaching. This theory is interesting, considering that the first edition unpublished version of The Merry Wives of Windsor was spelled Horn instead of Herne. It is worth noting that Horn is a very common British surname. Simply a motive? Herne the Hunter illustrates a ghostly motif. The mention of Herne the Hunter committing suicide is in line with a long-held folkloric belief that a violent death or a suicide is ground zero for a haunting. If someone dies in a certain location, their ghost will haunt that location for eternity. Herne the Hunter is said to rattle chains, which again is a typical ghost motif. Ghosts rattle chains that can be found in Oscar Wilde's The Canterville Ghost, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and M.R. James' Ghost Stories Rats. The legend of Herne the Hunter shares with other characters as well-known folklore motif the Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt can be found in folklore from many Northern European cultures. The Wild Hunt motif presents a chase led by a mythological figure escorted by a ghostly group of hunters enraged in pursuit. The leader of the Wild Hunt is associated with many significant figures from myths and legends. Odin, the Italian leader, Theodoric the Great, the psychopomp Gon ap Nud from Welsh mythology, and even several biblical figures like Cain, Gabriel, Herod, or the devil. It's not uncommon to find mention of hounds, hellhounds, in descriptions of the Wild Hunt. To see the Wild Hunt was an omen that something terrible was coming, be it the death of a king, an outbreak of a plague, war, and sometimes a prophecy of death for those who had witnessed the Wild Hunt. The true origin of Herne the Hunter may never be found, other than the Merry Wives of Windsor and its various versions. There is almost no written evidence about Herne the Hunter until the 1840s. Next time you visit Berkshire, keep an eye out for this ghostly antlered rider near oak trees. Now that's interesting. Herne is said to ride at night, especially during storms. He wears horns, rattles chains, blasts trees and cattle, and occasionally appears to mortals. Herne's oak in his favorite haunt was supposedly almost 700 years old when it was blown down in 1863. It was replaced with a young oak given by Queen Victoria. This is on Collective Spark by Lauren Dillon, Historic Mysteries. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box